Hi there, my name's Aileen, and this is the story of how my parents invited me over for dinner, just to tell me they rewrote their will and left everything to my siblings. No warning, no discussion, just, "You're already successful, sweetheart." But that dinner was never about reconnecting. It was a setup, a trap wrapped in lasagna and fake smiles. And that night, sitting at the same table where I once learned my multiplication tables, I realized something far worse than being left out. I was only ever useful to them as long as I stayed silent and paid the bills. I'd covered their mortgage, paid off my brother's DUI fines, bought my sister's influencer gear. I did it all without keeping score, because I thought that's what love looked like. But when I stopped paying, the real faces came out. The lies, the smear campaigns, the vandalism. So, how did it all unravel? What finally pushed me to say enough? And when I finally fought back, how far were they willing to go to make me the villain? Stick around. It gets uglier before it gets free. The text came late in the afternoon, just as I was closing my laptop after a long day of back-to-back calls. "We're making lasagna tonight. Your favorite. Come home, sweetheart. Just us, like old times." That was Mom, always sugarcoating poison. I stared at the message for a full minute before tossing my phone aside. It wasn't like her to send warm invitations without a motive. I hadn't been to the house in nearly 6 months, not since the last time Delphine accused me of trying to outshine the family at Dad's birthday dinner by showing up in a blazer. Apparently being presentable was offensive now. Still, something in her tone sounded final, like a curtain call I hadn't rehearsed for. By 6 sharp, I pulled into the cul-de-sac in Linwood where I'd grown up. Nothing had changed. The wind chimes still hung by the porch. The shrubs were trimmed like they were waiting for a realtor's open house, and the porch light flickered like a dying lighthouse. I parked behind Tobias's obnoxiously large truck and beside Delphine's white Lexus, which had glittery bumper stickers and a vanity plate that said, "Queen Bee." Typical. The moment I stepped inside, I knew I'd made a mistake. Delphine greeted me with a sugary grin. "Look who finally remembered she has a family." "Hi, Del," I muttered, taking off my coat. Tobias didn't even look up from his phone. He gave me a lazy nod and went back to scrolling, no doubt checking the odds on some sports bet he couldn't afford to lose. The kitchen smelled like home, but it didn't feel like it. Mom was pulling the lasagna from the oven with theatrical flair, like she was hosting a Hallmark reunion. Dad sat at the table already, silently folding napkins with the precision of a man trying not to exist. As we sat down, Marlene launched into small talk, neighborhood gossip, weather complaints, Delphine's latest brand deals. It all dripped with fake warmth. They kept looking at each other across the table. Subtle glances, tight-lipped smiles. I wasn't stupid. They were up to something. My unease simmered just beneath my skin as I poked at my slice of lasagna. "So, what's the occasion?" I asked. Mom's eyes sparkled. "No occasion, just wanted everyone home. Like old times." I cut my food slowly, chewing, nodding. Sure, because Marlene always cooked without an agenda. Then came dessert. As Dad brought over the lemon pie, Mom cleared her throat. I noticed how Delphine sat up straighter, and Tobias suddenly put his phone down. Marlene placed her fork neatly on the table. "We wanted to talk to you all together. As a family," Tobias smirked. "We thought it was only fair you heard it from us directly." I didn't blink. "Heard what?" "The will," Mom said. "We finalized it last week." I set down my fork. "Everything's going to Tobias and Delphine," she added, voice breezy as if she'd just announced they were redecorating. I blinked once. "What?" Tobias leaned in, arms crossed. "You don't need it, Aileen. You've got your career, your apartment, your whole independent woman vibe." Delphine laughed under her breath. "Yeah, and the rest of us? Some of us still need help. We're not obsessed with success." I looked to Dad, waiting for something, anything. His eyes were fixed on the silverware. The silence stretched, heavy like wet concrete. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "So let me get this straight. You're cutting me out completely because I've managed to take care of myself?" Mom's expression didn't change. "You've always been the one who didn't need us. And frankly, we think that's beautiful. You're strong." That word, strong, landed like a slap. Delphine leaned back, smug. I mean, buying us stuff all these years doesn't mean you're owed anything. That's not how families work. Tobias added, You did it to feel important. Now you're mad it didn't buy you a seat at the table. My pulse roared in my ears. I looked at Dad again. Nothing. You know what hurts the most? I said, voice quiet but steady. Not that I'm being cut out. Not even that I paid your mortgage for 2 years without ever being thanked. What hurts is realizing none of you even liked me. You just used me. Marlene gave a cold smile. Don't be dramatic. This is about fairness. Delphine snorted. Spare us the sob story. Tobias shrugged. You act like this is betrayal. We're just moving on. I stared at them, really stared. My mother's curated denial, Tobias's smug entitlement, Delphine's shallow cruelty. I'd walked into that house thinking maybe this was the start of mending something. Instead, I'd been ambushed. My hands were trembling beneath the table. I curled them into fists against my thighs. I turned to Dad one last time. Are you really okay with this? His lips parted, but no words came out. That's when I knew. It had never been about love. It had always been about control. And I was the only one who didn't follow the script. I stood slowly, the chair scraping against the hardwood. All 3 of them looked up at me, startled by the sound, like they hadn't expected me to stand at all. I took a deep breath, willing my voice to remain calm. You're right, I don't need you, but you sure as hell needed me. And now you'll find out what life looks like without my help. Mom scoffed. This is exactly why we didn't tell you sooner. Delphine rolled her eyes. Always making it about yourself. I turned without another word. At the doorway, I hesitated, not out of doubt, but closure. I looked back one last time, straight at my father, the man who had once told me I could do anything. Now he couldn't even look me in the eye. I opened the door. The air outside was sharp, clean, real. I stood up, swallowed the lump in my throat, and said something I never thought I'd say at that table. The words had barely left my lips when the silence hit harder than any slap could. I didn't leave right away. I wanted to, I should have. But I stood there, just behind my chair, as if the act of standing had shifted something permanent in the room. My hands were steady now. My voice had done its job, but my heart? It was quietly splitting open. Marlene leaned back, the corners of her mouth tugging upward like she'd won a prize. You always react like this, she said coolly. No one's attacking you. Tobias scoffed. She thinks everything is about her. Typical. I crossed my arms, locking my gaze on my mother. I gave everything, and this is how you repay me? It's not about repayment, she said, as if the word itself was vulgar. It's about family. You've always made it transactional. That was rich, coming from the woman who used my bank account like it had no password. Tobias added with a smirk, You act like you deserve a medal for doing what family should do. I clenched my jaw. Covering 2 years of mortgage payments wasn't family duty. Neither was refinancing my own loan to pay your tuition. Oh, please, he said, waving me off. You're obsessed with numbers. That's your whole personality. Delphine joined in. You never show up unless it's about money. We feel that, Aileen. There it was. The group performance, one by one, each of them picking their cue. I'd seen this show before, but never from the front row. I didn't come here to beg, I said flatly, but I expected a shred of decency. Marlene's tone sharpened. What you expected was control. You think that just because you earn more, you're owed more. That's not how this family works. I earned everything I have. You asked for help. I gave it, every time, quietly. And that's the problem, she said, her voice rising. You think being quiet makes you noble. It doesn't. It makes you manipulative. I blinked. Excuse me? You helped us because it made you feel powerful, she continued. And now that we won't let you dangle that over us, you're throwing a tantrum. Gaslight, deflect, reverse. Classic Marlene. I turned to Walter, who still hadn't spoken. Dad, I said slowly, do you really think this is fair? He inhaled, shifted in his seat. His eyes flicked to mine and then back to the floor. You're the strong one, sweetheart, he said quietly. You've always been strong. That answer landed like cold steel in my chest. I'm not asking for your admiration, I said. I'm asking if you were ever on my side. His lips pressed together. No answer. Just like always. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let it win. Every gift, every loan, every last-minute Venmo to cover someone's overdraft. I never kept a record, because I thought love didn't need receipts. Delphine rolled her eyes. We didn't ask for all that. No, you expected it, I snapped. You expected me to clean up your messes without question, and now you're painting me as greedy for finally saying no? Marlene stood up slowly, her tone sharp. Don't twist this, Aileen. We didn't cut you out. We simply gave to the children who need more support. Then be honest and say it. I was just your bank account. That's all I ever was to you. No one replied. No one moved. The air in the dining room turned thick, like the walls themselves were ashamed. I stepped away from the table. The floor creaked beneath my heels, but no one followed. No one tried to stop me. That hurt more than I'd expected. I'm done, I said, barely above a whisper. Still, they said nothing. Not even Delphine. Not even Walter. The front door clicked behind me with an eerie softness. The evening had grown colder since I'd arrived. The sky above the cul-de-sac was an inky navy now, the last hints of daylight slipping behind clouds. I didn't drive home right away. I parked 3 blocks from my building and just sat there, engine running, staring at the quiet rows of apartments glowing with warm, inviting light. People inside were probably winding down from normal Saturdays, pajamas, sitcoms, maybe a glass of wine. Meanwhile, I had walked out of the house I grew up in like a stranger escaping a courtroom. When I finally got back to my place, I didn't turn on the lights. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and walked straight to the kitchen. The fridge hummed. The air felt too still. I opened the bottle of Cabernet I'd been saving since Christmas. Funny, I'd been waiting for a special occasion. I guess surviving an ambush counts. I poured a generous glass and curled up on the couch, staring out the window at the city that never asked me to apologize for existing. My phone screen lit up. 7 missed calls. 2 from Marlene, 1 from Walter, and 4 from a blocked number I didn't need a psychic to identify. I let it buzz in my palm. It felt like the only thing in the room still breathing. No rage, no yelling, just a hollow ache that curled up in my chest and settled there like it was home. I wasn't mad. Not yet. I was just tired. The next morning, I woke up with the wine glass still on the coffee table and a stiff neck. A single new voicemail blinked on my screen. I hit play. Good morning, sweetheart. Marlene's voice cooed like she was selling cupcakes on a Sunday bake sale. I hope you got home safe. I know last night was intense, but let's not let one dinner undo everything. You know how families are. We fight, we recover. That's what we do. I almost believed her, until the last sentence. Oh, and I trust the mortgage transfer went through this morning. I scheduled the insurance renewal too, just a heads up. There it was, the leash. Padded in velvet, but a leash nonetheless. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Later that afternoon, as I tried focusing on blueprints for a project deadline, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Walter. A text, not a call. I know this is hard. Maybe just apologize to your mom so things calm down? Not, I'm sorry we hurt you. Not even, let's talk. Just a push to smooth things over, to make me the peacekeeper again. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I set the phone face down. They still thought I was the problem, that I needed to be fixed, that I was too emotional, too ambitious, too inconvenient. My mind drifted, flashes of birthdays I'd thrown for them, alone. The year Tobias lost his job, and I covered his rent. The camera equipment I ordered for Delphine's influencer, Brand. Even the damn plumber I paid last March when the basement flooded, they forgot all of it. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the money. Not even the betrayal. It was that they never remembered what I couldn't forget. They only noticed me when I stopped giving. I opened my banking app. Mortgage transfer, active. $1,800 on the first of every month. Below it, the utilities, labeled Home Support. My hand hovered over the screen. Click. Another screen popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? Yes. And just like that, the chain broke. I leaned back on the couch. The silence didn't feel suffocating this time. It felt earned. The following morning, for the first time in weeks, I woke up without checking my phone. The apartment was still and calm. No buzz of incoming demands, no guilt-lined reminders. The light through the blinds painted soft stripes across the floor, and my coffee brewed with a quiet hum that didn't feel interrupted by anyone's expectations. I actually finished my toast, hot, not microwaved from 3 hours ago because someone needed a deposit by noon. A part of me hoped the silence meant they'd finally gotten the message. That my absence, both emotional and financial, had spoken louder than the years I played the background provider. But peace never lasts long in a family that feeds on control. 2 days passed. Then came the first ripple. A voicemail from Marlene, her tone sweet as syrup left too long in the sun. "I saw the mortgage didn't go through," she said, as if she were commenting on a missed haircut. "Are you okay, sweetheart? This isn't like you. You're not unraveling, are you?" That last word stuck. Unraveling. Next was Delphine. A text, bubbly and cruel in its passive aggression. "Hey sis, not sure what's up, but hope you're not in a dark place or anything. Maybe check in?" I didn't respond. I deleted both like they were spam, but the impact lingered. By Thursday, it spread beyond the family. While waiting for the elevator at work, my colleague Melanie turned to me mid-scroll and said, "Random question, is your brother Tobias?" I nodded cautiously. She hesitated, then added, "He's been at the pint with some guys I know. Told them you've been going through something. He said you've always been a bit intense when pressure's on." I froze. Melanie noticed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to. He made it sound like you're spiraling or something." "He did?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant. She nodded, visibly uncomfortable. "I just thought you should know. It sounded calculated." Calculated. That was Tobias's specialty. Always play the victim before someone notices your fingerprints. By lunchtime, I was pacing my office, phone in hand, but no idea who I'd even call. My head was swimming with half-finished conversations, imaginary confrontations, people I hadn't seen in years now suddenly getting a version of me I didn't authorize. It wasn't the rumors that broke me, it was the intention behind them. He wasn't trying to hurt my reputation, he was trying to isolate me, to flip the narrative so that if I pushed back, no one would believe it was justified. "You've always been the dramatic one." "She holds grudges." Classic middle child syndrome. That old chorus came flooding back. I had heard versions of it at every family barbecue, whispered at holidays when I left early to finish work, muttered when I said no. I closed my office door and sat on the floor, knees to my chest, breath shallow. For a moment, I felt 12 again. When I told Mom I didn't want to share my birthday party with Tobias, and she said, "You need to learn to put others first." Or 16. When I cried after being skipped for college tour money so Delphine could go on her dance retreat, and Dad said, "Don't make things harder than they are." My therapist's number was still in my contacts. I hadn't called in over a year, but that afternoon I did. She didn't ask what happened, she just said, "Talk." I told her everything, the dinner, the will, the payments, the smear campaign. When I finished, her voice came through the line like warm water over ice. "You're not the crazy one, Aileen. You're the clear one. That's why they're scared." That night, I sat on my balcony watching the lights of downtown shimmer like tiny mirrors reflecting every version of myself they had tried to shatter. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was a notification. Tobias had posted a story. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The caption preview read, "Some people just can't handle losing control." I opened my messages and typed slowly, carefully. "I know what you're saying. Stop now. You won't like where this goes." My thumb hovered for a breath. Then I pressed send. The message sat there, unread, for now. By the next morning, the message I sent to Tobias still showed as unread. I wasn't surprised. Ignoring accountability was a skill he'd perfected by age 11. Still, part of me had hoped a direct warning would scare him enough to stop, or at least pause. But then again, Tobias didn't pause. He pounced. It was around noon when I got tagged in an Instagram story by my cousin Kara, the kind of tag that starts a small fire in your stomach before you even know what the match was. I opened the post. Delphine had uploaded a reel to her feed, one of those overly filtered monologues where she stared just off camera with a deep sigh and dramatic piano music playing underneath. The caption read, "Some sisters use success as a weapon, but money can't buy love." My name wasn't mentioned. It didn't have to be. The comments section did the rest of the dirty work. "Wow, your sister sounds toxic. Money doesn't make you better than blood. Sending hugs, Queen. Family should support each other, not control." I didn't comment. I didn't DM her. I just took screenshots. Every word, every heart emoji, every mass jab pretending to be insight, it all went into a folder I labeled evidence_001. That afternoon, I tried to focus. I really did. I queued up a podcast about emotional resilience, opened my journal, even made tea instead of coffee because it calms cortisol. I wrote things like, "You are not your family's scapegoat, and silence is not surrender" in loopy cursive across the page. For a few hours, it worked. I convinced myself maybe the worst was over. Maybe if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd burn themselves out. Then Friday came. I was returning home from work later than usual. The sun was nearly gone, casting long shadows between the buildings downtown. My apartment stood tall against the dusk, a silent refuge I couldn't wait to crawl back into. Except I couldn't get in. I stopped short on the third-floor landing. My door was sealed shut. Not just jammed, not locked, sealed. Yellow insulation foam had been sprayed into every crevice, around the frame, across the gap at the bottom, even in the keyhole. Hardened, dry, intentional. For a second, I just stood there, staring at it like it was some bizarre art installation. Then my stomach dropped. I pressed my fingers to the foam, rock solid. I tried the knob, knowing it was pointless. I stepped back, breath catching in my throat. The building manager, a soft-spoken guy named Leon, came up the stairs behind me. He froze at the sight. "What the hell?" he muttered. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, voice flat. He shook his head. This wasn't random. Someone knew what they were doing." I didn't argue. I already knew who did it. A locksmith arrived an hour later, shaking his head before he even set down his bag. "This ain't no prank," he said. "Whoever did this came prepared." While he worked, I went downstairs and pulled up my hallway camera footage from the building app. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Tobias. Hood pulled low, face angled away, but it was him. I knew the walk, the broad shoulders, the way he always rolled his left foot slightly inward, a limp he faked for attention once and never dropped. He was on the footage for 10 minutes, glancing around, checking his phone, then pulling out 2 industrial-sized cans of foam sealant, like he was doing routine maintenance instead of felony vandalism. He didn't even rush. He took his time. I saved the video. Then I stared at the screen, heart pounding, as memories crashed down like waves. The night I bailed him out of a DUI. The semester I secretly covered his tuition when he forgot to submit his FAFSA. The check I wrote for his engagement party that never actually happened. "I saved you," I whispered, "and you spray-foamed my door shut." The locksmith finally cracked the seal around the frame, and I stepped inside to find a slight chemical smell, but everything else intact. I locked the door behind me and collapsed onto the couch, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Not the kind that makes you cry, the kind that sharpens your focus. I opened my laptop, uploaded the footage, saved the time-stamped screen, and then I opened the city's non-emergency police report page. Type of incident? Vandalism. Suspect known? Yes, relative, brother, full name provided. At the bottom, there was an option to upload evidence. I attached the footage, double-checked every field, took a breath, and hit send. "He crossed the line," I whispered. I warned him. The following morning, I stood in line at the downtown precinct, a flash drive in one hand, my ID in the other. My coat still smelled faintly of the foam the locksmith had scraped from my door the night before. I wasn't nervous. I was done shaking. Inside, the woman at the front desk directed me to an officer named Reyes. He sat across from me in a cramped office lined with laminated posters about fraud prevention and domestic disturbances. As I handed over the flash drive, I braced for a look: judgment, skepticism, pity. But it never came. Instead, Officer Reyes plugged in the drive, clicked play, and nodded. Clear intent, vandalism. You've got solid evidence here. When I didn't say anything, he looked up and added, "You did the right thing, Miss Holt. You're not overreacting. You're protecting your space." Those words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were comforting, but because they were the opposite of everything I'd ever heard from my family. An hour later, I stepped out into the street, sunlight flickering off the high-rise windows. For the first time in months, I felt taller. That feeling lasted exactly 2 hours. My phone lit up with a voicemail from Marlene. No hello, no soft segue, just fury. "You really called the police? We are your family, Aileen. You called the cops on your brother? Have you completely lost it?" I deleted it halfway through. Then came a text from Walter. "There has to be another way to handle this. Can't we fix this without lawyers?" I didn't even blink before deleting his message too. That night I sat on my couch, opened my journal, and wrote one sentence at the top of the page. They taught me boundaries were betrayal. I'm learning now that they're actually survival. I stared at those words for a long time. Then came a memory from 2018, as vivid as if it had just happened. Tobias, drunk off cheap whiskey, had borrowed my car, just for a quick ride. He totaled it into a guardrail 10 blocks away. Marlene called me, frantic. "Don't involve the cops. He's already shaken up. Just handle it, honey." I paid the deductible, covered the impound fee, replaced the car the next month. He never apologized. That was the first time I swallowed the rage. The first time I looked at my reflection and thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm the problem. Now? I was done swallowing. The next morning, the phone rang again. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered. It was a detective from the Seattle PD. "We've reviewed the footage," she said, "and we've reached out to Mr. Tobias Holt to inform him of the pending report." My pulse quickened. And? He was less than cooperative, but he's been advised to make restitution before we move forward with formal charges. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Walter. I let it go to voicemail. He left one. Of course, his voice was low, tight with restrained anger. "What will it take for you to drop this? Name it, we'll figure it out." I didn't hesitate. I texted him back. $3,000. That's what it cost to repair the door. Plus, an apology from Tobias, not a fake one, a real one, signed. 2 minutes later he replied, "This is extortion." I smiled bitterly and typed back, "No, this is consequence." The message stayed unread for hours. Then, just after 6 p.m., a bank notification popped up on my phone. Deposit received. $3,000 memo. Final payment. I stared at the screen for a moment, then laughed. Not from humor, but the sheer absurdity of it all. It had taken legal intervention, police footage, and a threat of charges for them to finally pay me back for a fraction of what I'd given over the years. It wasn't about the money. It never had been. But it felt good. Finally, something was on my terms. If they can't control you, they'll try to destroy you. A few days passed. I didn't hear a word from any of them. No calls, no voicemails, nothing. It was the kind of silence that didn't feel like peace. It felt like strategy. I should have known it wouldn't last. That Thursday morning, I sat at the dining table with my laptop open, sipping coffee while drafting an email to a client. My inbox pinged with a subject line that made my stomach lurch. Tag notification. You've been mentioned in a post. I clicked through without thinking. Delphine had posted on her Instagram stories again, this time with pastel pink text over a moody photo of a sunset. The quote read, "Some sisters use money as control. Real love doesn't come with a receipt. No names, no direct reference. But anyone who knew us, they'd get the message." I didn't engage. I didn't comment. Instead, I took a screenshot and saved it to a folder I had started for moments like this. I named it Receipts. Fitting. But the comments under her main post said enough. Cousin Lacey wrote, "You deserve better. Family shouldn't manipulate with money." Someone I didn't even recognize replied, "Was this about Aileen? I always felt like she thought she was above everyone else." Above? I'd been beneath their weight for years. I closed my laptop, picked up my phone, opened Facebook, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't hesitate. I wrote a post, not a rant, not a scream, just the truth. I didn't need to name names. The facts spoke for themselves. I paid the mortgage on a house I didn't live in for 3 years. I funded tuition I never benefited from. I covered gear for dreams that weren't mine. I said yes when I was tired, when I was scared, when I was broke myself, and when I finally said no, they called it betrayal. Funny how silence makes you noble until you stop being useful. I hit post, sat back, waited. It took less than an hour. Reactions poured in. Likes, hearts, sad faces. Comments came in waves. Cousin Lauren, I had no idea you were the one helping with the mortgage. Wow. Jason, an old coworker. So that's why you pulled back from happy hours. Respect, honestly. Even Delphine's former roommate wrote, she always told us you were a control freak. Guess that narrative doesn't hold up anymore. I didn't reply to any of them. I just let the post breathe. Let it be. And then, as expected, came the fallout. Marlene left a voicemail late that night. Her voice dripped venom. You humiliated your own family in front of everyone we know. Facebook? Really, Aileen? I didn't respond. Minutes later, Walter sent a single-word text. Why? I deleted it without reading it twice, because if he had to ask, then none of it mattered. I stood by the window that night, watching the lights of the city, my own reflection faintly visible in the glass. I wasn't proud, I wasn't triumphant, but I wasn't hiding anymore. There had always been this belief in our family that keeping things private meant keeping things together. That silence was a virtue. That self-sacrifice was love. I had lived that way for decades. I believed that if I just kept giving, eventually they'd see me as more than just the reliable one, the capable one, the disposable one. But that kind of love never existed, not for me, not from them. I used to think being the quiet achiever meant I was strong. Turns out it just made me easy to ignore. Until now. I muted the family group chat, blocked Marlene's number, then Walter's, then Delphine's. My phone, for the first time in years, stopped buzzing. I exhaled into the silence. I said it once, I whispered, and now they can never unhear it. That was the part they didn't understand. I hadn't written that post for revenge or sympathy. I had written it for clarity, for myself, and no amount of outrage from them could undo the truth once it was out there. They had spent years controlling the narrative. Now they'd learn what it felt like to lose it. The line between exposure and liberation. The morning light came soft through the blinds, casting long, slow-moving shadows on my hardwood floors. It had been a week since the Facebook post, and no messages had come through since I blocked them all. You'd think I'd feel peace, but peace doesn't come easy when silence was always used against you. It wasn't absence that bothered me. It was the echo, the mental replay of everything unsaid, everything unfinished. The apartment felt still in a way I wasn't used to. For years, my mind buzzed with their problems, their demands, their emergencies disguised as expectations. Now, nothing. I poured coffee and sat by the window. My phone buzzed. Not a number I recognized, but a name that stopped me cold. Lorraine, my mother's sister. Her message was simple. I saw your post. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I hadn't seen Lorraine since a family barbecue 3 years ago, when she politely asked how work was going while Delphine loudly recounted her latest brand deal. Lorraine had always seemed neutral, uninvolved, but maybe that was just another kind of silence. We agreed to meet at a cafe just off 4th Avenue downtown, a small place I used to go before work, back when mornings weren't heavy with drama. She was already there when I arrived. She stood when she saw me, her expression open, nervous. You look tired, she said. I gave a dry laugh. It's been that kind of year. We sat. I ordered a tea. She didn't rush. She didn't dodge. She just said, your mom never told us about the mortgage, the tuition, any of it. I watched her, careful not to fall into another trap of performance and forgiveness. I didn't speak up for a long time, I said. Not because I couldn't, but because I was scared that if I did, I'd be blamed for making it real. Lorraine nodded slowly. She always said you were fine, that you didn't need help. I snorted. I didn't need help. I just needed them to stop draining me dry. She looked down, then back at me. They're not mad because you lied. They're mad because you told the truth. I hadn't expected to cry. Not in public. Not now. But that sentence cracked something in me. Years of justifying their behavior. Years of calling my exhaustion love. Years of letting family mean I couldn't say no. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. Lorraine reached out and touched my fingers. I see you now, she said. I really do. I didn't answer. I just nodded. She didn't try to fix anything, didn't make promises. She just listened. And that, I realized, was more healing than any apology could have been. When we finished our tea, she pulled out her phone. You probably don't want to know, but things are rough back there. I didn't stop her. Tobias is struggling. Apparently your dad had to co-sign something for him again. Delphine lost her sponsorship with that travel company. Something about bad press. I sipped the last of my tea. She always said I was the toxic one. Lorraine gave a tight smile. People get loud when the truth threatens their fantasy. She paused. Your parents, they've taken part-time work. I think Walter's doing night shifts at a warehouse. Marlene's been helping out at a florist. I looked out the window. The sky was a thick gray, threatening rain. I didn't want to destroy them, I said quietly. I just wanted to stop saving them. We stood and hugged, not awkwardly, but like something reconnected, not fully healed, but present. I walked home under clouds that hung low, brushing the tops of buildings like whispered warnings. There was no dramatic music, no feeling of triumph. Just the slow, steady calm of a heart that had finally stopped sprinting for other people. Back home, I set down my bag and let my coat fall on the chair. I glanced at my muted phone, at the blocked numbers still sitting untouched in my settings. Maybe I'd unblock them someday. Maybe not. Either way, I knew one thing now with absolute clarity. I wasn't the villain in their story. I just refused to keep playing the scapegoat. Freedom doesn't always mean healing. 2 months later, I stood on a narrow balcony overlooking the Arno River in Florence. The December air carried a bite, but I sipped my espresso slowly, wrapped in a borrowed wool shawl from the local shop downstairs. Morning bells chimed across the city, small, steady things that asked nothing of me. No favors, no explanations, no unpaid debts masquerading as loyalty. But even in paradise, some wounds whisper. They don't vanish with distance. They only echo differently. When I booked the flight, I told myself it wasn't running. It was release. I didn't post about it, didn't share a single photo online. This was mine. Not a flex, not a retreat, just mine. Florence was a strange kind of beautiful. Cobbled alleys that curled into sudden plazas, frescoes tucked into quiet corners of cathedrals, the murmur of languages I didn't understand, soothing because they weren't meant for me. Everything about this city told me I didn't owe anyone anything here. I wandered museums alone, letting color and centuries wash over me. I left coins in church boxes without making wishes. I journaled in cafes with no Wi-Fi, letting ink flow like breath. Some days, I didn't speak to anyone but baristas. And that felt more honest than most of my conversations back home. I filled pages of a leather notebook Lorraine had given me before I left. On the first page I had written, I spent my whole life funding their dreams. Now I'm finally buying back my own time. Some pages were filled with questions, some with guilt. But the longer I stayed, the more I began writing things that sounded like possibility. Then one afternoon, while sitting on a bench outside Santa Croce, an email popped up from Lorraine. No message, just a single photo. It was taken from across the room, probably a phone snap during a holiday gathering. Marlene sat at a corner table in a local diner, her face caught in profile. Her hair looked thinner, her shoulders slumped. A plate of untouched food sat in front of her. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then, quietly, I saved it to my folder labeled Family Archive. Not revenge, not pity, just context. I didn't reply to Lorraine's email. She would understand. That night I took a walk along the riverbank. The water was dark, moving slow. My boots clicked against stone. I thought about the version of me that had once juggled 2 jobs while paying for Tobias's textbooks. The girl who drove Delphine to photo shoots on her only day off. the woman who answered late-night calls from Marlene while exhausted from back-to-back deadlines. That version of me had been called selfish the minute she stopped saying yes. Now, no was my favorite word. I whispered it to the Arno, just to hear it out loud. No, 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 not in bitterness, but in practice. Because reclaiming it wasn't just an act of resistance, it was survival. When I flew back to Seattle, the sky welcomed me with thick, wintry clouds. The city hadn't changed, but I had. My apartment felt warmer than I remembered. Not in temperature, but tone. The silence was mine now, not something pressed against me like a punishment. I lit a few candles, turned on music, set the table for 4. Just a few friends. Nothing fancy. A simple dinner, laughter in place of judgment, refill offers instead of obligations. Lorraine arrived last. She didn't knock, just walked in holding coffee and a box of cookies. She hugged me like she meant it, no words needed. Later that evening, as I cleared dishes and wiped counters, I paused by the window. Holiday lights blinked faintly across the buildings. The air outside smelled like pine and distant snow. I thought about everything I'd lost. Money, connection, illusions, but also what I'd found. Boundaries, honesty, myself. They left me nothing in their will, but gave me the one thing they never meant to. My freedom. Even now, I still catch myself wondering if things could have been different. If love and obligation hadn't been so tangled in my family. But here's what I've learned. You are not selfish for protecting your peace. You are not cruel for walking away from manipulation dressed up as tradition, and you are never wrong for saying enough. For so long, I believed love was sacrifice, that the more I gave, the more I'd be seen. But the truth is, love that demands your silence, your wallet, and your soul without ever pouring anything back in return isn't love, it's control. And walking away from it was the first real act of love I ever gave myself. If my story hit a nerve, or maybe even crack something open, ask yourself, who am I still saving and why? And more importantly, who's saving me? Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been the giver in your family, the one who held it all together until you finally couldn't anymore? Drop A in the comments and share your experience, or just say hello and tell me where you're watching from. I read every message, truly. And hey, if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or even made you feel seen, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next one. I've got more stories coming, real, raw, and rooted in the kind of truth we don't talk about enough. If you felt this video spoke to you, leave a 1 in the comments, or let me know what city you're tuning in from. And if it didn't resonate, I still want to hear why. Every story isn't for everyone, but every voice matters. Take care of yourselves, speak up when it's hard, and never apologize for choosing your own peace. We'll talk again soon.